In this video, I will be reading a few pages, usually 1 to 2, sometimes 3 pages from each of these books. This is just a new thing to do to give potential readers a sort of taste for my reading style and the vibe of each of these books. Now, given if I'm only reading, 1 or 2 pages, that might be easier to do to pick from something like Fractal, which is, a very short book, a very easy read, or Shadows in the Eye, which is also a very short book, easy to read in that it is short, but not easy to read in the content. The content is very dark and bleak for Shadows in the Eye. Fractal is also a bit harrowing subject matter, but hinges on sci-fi. Shadows in the Eye does not have any sci-fi to it. It is one of my rare moments of just straightforward, a mix of crime, thriller, drama, psychological thriller, for lack of a better word. My mainstay is sci-fi. Ursa Steel, The Perfect Enemy, and Dark Out of the Earth all have very similar-ish. Ursa Steel is a sci-fi anthology focusing on mechs. The Perfect Enemy is a sci-fi short story, and Dark Out of the Earth is my second longest novel to date. It is a bit of a behemoth, and it was difficult to pick, a short passage from this book. But I did it, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. Again, this is just a snippet. I did avoid dialogue as much as possible. I get into some more dialogue in this one, just to give some variety, and because it's already in first person, which is extremely rare for me. So it's a bit more personality to it. But I'm not great at reading dialogue in, a book. I think that that's something that is better for the inside voice, when you're reading. Of course, different if you like audiobooks. As you can tell probably already, my voice is kind of fucked up. So not the best day to be doing this, but I was feeling it, so I did it. So you'll have to forgive that, of course. If you guys like this, if anybody's watching this and you enjoy kind of just having a little inside look at some of my books, let me know. But I will be doing it nonetheless. I have a few more. I have 5 more to do that I will release sometime. I hope you guys enjoy it. The following reading is from Ursa Steel, which is a collection of 3 sci-fi stories. They all encompass war to some degree. 2 of them focus more on mech combat. The first, however, is almost completely devoid of mech combat and focuses more on infantry fighting an alien race. That is the story I will be reading from. It is the first story in the book. It is called Harvest Death. He wandered over to a tangle of limbs that belonged to 2 corpses which had flattened a large bush. When Greenwood hunkered over, he recoiled from the power of the smell. The sight alone would stick in his brain for a long time, he feared. A rifleman and a native had clashed. The soldier's chest was cleaved from shoulder to sternum, his ribs broken like sticks, his organs bisected and having spilled out through the gaping V-shaped wound. At its base, the enemy's machete-like weapon was still stuck in the flesh. The iron-colored blade was nearly 4 feet long, and the grip about 8 inches, composed of some sort of wood. Greenwood tried to avoid making eye contact with the dead infantryman. He knew that Beck, being Beck, had already identified their casualties. Ashamedly, Greenwood now avoided this to save his own conscience, although he knew it wouldn't last. The soldier's gaze was upturned to the bloodshot whites of his eyes, only a glimpse of his irises visible. His mouth frozen open in pain and horror, his tongue lolled out of his mouth, blood framing his teeth. The only smidgen of relief came when he saw the wounds inflicted upon the rifleman's fatal enemy. The creature's leathery green skin had been riddled with bullets, and the imperator in the soldier's dead hands was not known for a lack of penetration. That wasn't all, though. The native was missing one of its lower arms, as it appeared to have been shot messily from its torso joint. There was also a tactical knife plunged to the hilt in its gut, which made Greenwood all the more proud of the slain soldier. "The fleet would be proud," he muttered, his brow furrowed both with grief and an unparalleled anger. Or would it? "Sir?" Beck had not heard him completely. Greenwood stood up like a rigid spring. His gaze swept the shrubland. His eyes adjusted to the sunny skies, and he spotted all of the scattered corpses, even those obscured by large leaves. So many of the enemy, so few of their own, yet the deaths had not gone easily. "Tell the men to sort their fears," he said to Beck, passing him, a newfound vigor and fury in his voice, in his dull blue eyes. "We're taking the jungle." Beck nodded, grimly, resolutely. "Yes, sir." The following is a reading from Shadows in the Eye, a collection of short stories. There are 5 short stories in this 45-page book, and I will be reading from the second story, which is titled Tides of War. His general disposition could be likened to the gray skies, rain, and destitution plaguing Manhattan this week. But there is clearly more than meets the eye about him. He blabbered about nothing specific while waving the revolver around and demanding new shots of tequila. That he was beyond placid already yielded neither surprise nor question. Only a few fellow patrons were wise enough to see that, despite their own demons that had landed them in the Public Enemy pub, this man was experiencing something not so simple. He wasn't just drunk. He wasn't just having a bad day. And, one might argue, he wasn't just crazy. The accumulation of all three had clearly launched the man into a meat grinder of sanity. Its devouring of him was a slow and agonizing process that had managed to create this madman everyone was witnessing. For the last 20 minutes, after disarming both the owner and bouncer, and then pistol whipping a random patron who tried to overtake him, the man had been playing a peculiar game. Russian roulette. For every shot of tequila he knocked back, the man would eject the cylinder of the revolver and spin it, lock it back in, and put the snub-nosed muzzle to his temple. He would then say, almost sing-song, "to and fro," before squeezing the trigger. With each click of an empty chamber, the man chuckled unevenly and proceeded to demand a new shot. Onlookers were almost equally in awe of his insanity as they were of his luck. They watched as the man went through 8 consecutive clicks, some of them flinching simultaneously, over the course of 20 minutes. He resumed his approach of the porch, a carcass of wood and chipped paint, clinging to the house as if some dying parasite refusing to abandon its host. The fog had risen above the property, not unlike the nomadic state of fire in a building. Heat rose, as they say, but stillness was all-encompassing. Flynn could feel the thickness of the fog begin to settle again, as if his arrival had only made it scatter like cockroaches to a light. Yet now it was clear there was nothing to fear. Although Flynn would disagree. Motion. Fog ought not move the way it did, returning to the ground and attempting to impede his progress. He didn't even want to enter the house, not avidly anyway, and he started to feel that reluctance with or without the aid of mist. His pulse shifted from slow and pensive to something far more erratic. a staccato rhythm that his heart danced to, though his feet had never learned to. An instructor might claim that even chaos and inexperience followed a tempo. However, there was no cadence here. Not in the way Flynn's organs performed their duties, not in the gracelessness of each stride, and certainly not in the turbulent manner in which his thoughts began to wreak havoc behind his eyes. The crow cawed as if to bid farewell, or perhaps as a gesture of caution, before its imposing wings spread fully and it took flight, leaving this place with such ease. Jagged gaps formed in the roof above their heads, through metal and fabric as the creature clawed for traction. Almost immediately, it lost purchase and was flung into the bed of the truck. Ahead, Bastion saw obstacles, and not the kinds he could just risk running over. He slowed down. Maggie shouted something incoherent, and he felt his adrenaline rush unlike ever before. Behind them, with only the back seat as a sort of moat, was the half-skull that had previously mounted itself to the truck's hood. Now, the creature gained traction in the bed and shattered the rear window with its own head, screeching and growling simultaneously. Bastion stomped on the brakes on impulse, forced to with the obstacles ahead. Consequently, the half-skull was propelled through the rear window frame and directly into the back seat. It flopped around like a fish out of water, making a discordant mess of noises. Eliza screaming on top of that didn't dizzy Bastion any less, but it did motivate him. He spun in his seat, the truck in park, and snatched the revolver from the cup holder. Using it, he struck the flailing creature in its head and shoulders until it stopped, just enough to glare up into the front of the cabin and snap its jaws, narrowly missing his hand, but not the revolver. He squeezed the trigger twice in quick succession, and the creature's half-skull was obliterated through a temple. Maggot-infested gore sprayed the back seat, and the creature disintegrated seconds later into ember and ash. The hole suddenly burst with not one or two more troops, but even a third. They were like ants or scarabs spilling through a tight opening. It was beyond unnerving to witness how such large creatures could behave as their insectoid counterparts and fit through comparably small spaces, much less in groups. So, scratch my previous statement. We had to, pardon the pun, bug out. "Retreat! Retreat!" I shouted. Dom acknowledged the threat and immediately seconded me. As he repeated my order, I spotted Kaz's blip on my radar shift to the side. Behind me, over the commotion of infantrymen panicking, claustrophobia on top of being bottled with the enemy, I could hear a crunching sound. Two troops in front of me stole my attention, though. I looked ahead. One of the creatures had mounted the jeep, slashing at the turret even as it shredded its limbs and thorax. Plumes of green blood splashed in every direction. The octid screeching became unbearable in the tunnel. Another troop crawled along the wall to my right, defying gravity. It slashed out, a forelimb grating the actual cannon. I pivoted my torso and squeezed the trigger grip. The 2-gauge cluster cannon was like an enormous shotgun. A half-pound load of shot erupted from the large-bore muzzle, and through a flash of white-hot light, I witnessed it absolutely obliterate the troops' mandibles. Those enormous, serrated, pincer-like jaws would take 100 rotary rifle rounds to disintegrate like that, or one cluster from a Goliath's cannon. Fuck, I love this thing. Back up, back up! Meyer, the hell are you doing, soldier? Another troop crawled through the gore of its predecessor to completely incapacitate the turret on the back of the jeep, whose sensors had already been damaged. I blew it away half a second later with a burst from my minigun, all 5 barrels getting an opportunity to speak once. Then I chanced to glance over my shoulder. I spotted Kaz, holding up our column, at the back of the formation, repeatedly shoulder charging the tunnel wall to his right. Lashing out with his bayonet helped until the wall crumbled before him. I computed his strategy quicker than Dom had. Before we knew it, Kaz had breached the tunnel wall and vanished into the earth, which, luckily for him and us, didn't collapse in his wake. "Righto," Dom said. catching his breath and acknowledging Kaz's flanking strategy. Perhaps best communicated first, but Kaz had a way about him, and situations like this weren't necessarily accounted for. I got you on my radar, Kaz, but I don't have x-ray vision. Give me a sit rep. Copy. It's another tunnel. Kaz's voice hit a wall of static. Then gunfire thundered through the adjacent tunnel. Eventually his voice emerged in our comms again. Oh, fuck! Fucking fuck! Good talk, Kaz. Hard retreat, I shouted. Then I controlled my voice a touch. Try to push him toward the hole, Kaz. Gonna light up the Jeep. Fuck. Copy. That's gonna be one hell of a fireball down here, Mackie. Dom essentially breathing down my neck, despite being a few feet shorter under the circumstances.